allow it to be. And this act of allowing, easy to do when you face something beautiful. I allow this beautiful tree with the magnificent colors to be. That's easy. And then you walk one more step and suddenly you think your right foot goes right into the mud. Crunch. And there comes a minor challenge. Can you immediately say, oh, it already has happened. It is already. Not much you can do except, of course, pull your foot out and walk on. But usually, of course, it would lead to a reaction. So some words may then come out of your mouth. Contraction happens. And maybe there could be an immediate attempt to blame someone. This is what the ego likes to do. Something goes wrong, okay, who can I blame, says the ego. They should have warned people about this. Or if you're in the States, then the favorite thing is go to a lawyer and sue them. So, and this is a beautiful practice. The many things that, in quotation marks, go wrong in your life are actually the greatest things. In a way, even greater than the beautiful trees, because they can take you deeper. And so, to a large extent, the world is here for you to experience things going wrong. And that is the challenge of the world. And if you still think otherwise, you may have lived on this planet for 50, 60 or 70 years and still expect things not to go wrong. And that is the challenge of the world. And if you still think otherwise, you may have lived on this planet for 50, 60 or 70 years and still expect things not to go wrong. Now, the illusion that you can have things not going wrong, you can still live in that illusion if you live in an advanced, industrialized country, perhaps. Travel to India, and you can no longer live in the illusion that things around you are solid and that you are in control. You are not. Nothing that you plan is going to work out. Everything is going to be totally different from the way you expect it. And things will constantly challenge you, forms. And wherever you look, the world is not as solid as it seems to be here. Wherever you go, there are old people, dying people in the street. Are they not? Where are the old and dying people here? I don't see any. They're shut away. We mustn't look. Just pretend that they don't exist. We put them away there. The old go here, and the dying, we put them there. And the dead bodies, never look. Must never see a dead. It's very hard, unless you have a very close relative. If you ever want to see a dead body, they won't let you. They say you're mad. But if you are in India, you see dead bodies very easily. It's normal. And so you get a much better sense of the fragile nature of the world of things, objects, and forms. How insubstantial this world actually is. And it's only in the West that you have the illusion that the world of form is very substantial, solid, and was going to last. It's there. It has a solidity and permanency. It doesn't. And when sometimes a gigantic man-made form collapses, like 2 years ago in New York, that comes as a dreadful shock to people because it looked so solid and it collapsed. So the world of objects isn't as solid as it seems to be. The world of bodies isn't as permanent and solid as it seems to be. It is very, very fragile, fleeting, insubstantial. So if that's all you know, then you are in this fleeting, insubstantial universe, and there's nothing. And of course, there's constant fear when you identify with that. Even though they try to it's really very much like the Buddha, because the story goes that he was born into great wealth, and his father did not want him to see that there is poverty, that people grow old, and that people die. So he had already reached fairly advanced age. He was, I don't know, can't remember, 25, 30, whatever, and wasn't really aware that there's such a thing as ill, old and dying people, because he lived in, seems like almost like the West these days, that's shut away. And one day he saw it. His father didn't want him to see it because it had been predicted he would either become a great king or a great spiritual teacher. And the father didn't want him to become a spiritual teacher. He wanted him to carry on the business of being a king, the family business. And so, but the father had made the biggest mistake he could have made. He waited for so long. When finally he did go out, it was such a shock when he saw that people were lying in the streets dying and ill and old, and he saw dead bodies. He said, "What is this? Does this happen? What happened to this man? He's not moving anymore." He said, "He is dead." Dead? Yes. And that happens to everyone? And what's the point in anything? And soon later, he left everything behind. In the middle of the night, the story goes, when everybody was asleep, and this is a beautiful metaphor, everybody around him was asleep, and he walked out. If that's all there is, so his search then was for that dimension. Is there something else to life than just that? And it lasted a few years. And he tried all the practices, tried to achieve a state of perfection. He got very good at all the practices, and yet they didn't take him to the realization of space consciousness. And one day he almost starved himself to death when he said, "I've had enough." This is my translation of the sutras again. He said, "Enough is enough. Give me some food." And they brought him some food. Most disciples left him. He said, "Oh, he's lost his way. He's eating again." And then he ate normally, and he sat under a tree. And suddenly something happened. All resistance collapsed. He was no longer looking for anything to happen. There was surrender to what is, not looking for some state anymore. And there it was. The last thing that, there's a film, The Little Buddha, which has some nice things in it, although it's too much about the legendary Buddha, but there's still beautiful scenes in it. The last thing that disturbs him is when he's sitting under a tree and he sees his reflection in a little puddle of water. self-reflection. And he sees his face in the little puddle of water next to him, and he's fascinated by that suddenly. And suddenly an arm comes out of this pool of water and tries to pull him down. And he frees himself, and then the reflection is gone. This is the last attempt by the ego to be there as an object in his consciousness, to see himself as someone, to remain there as an object in his consciousness, a mental object, to making himself into a mental, this is normal consciousness, making himself into a mental object and then have a relationship with it. I love myself. I hate myself. Now, do I really hate myself? I must remind myself on the bathroom mirror that I love myself. I love myself. You have a relationship with yourself. Of course, it's better to love yourself than to hate yourself. It makes life a little easier. But when you love yourself, there's always on the other side the possibility that you might also hate yourself. Better to go beyond loving and hating yourself by not having a relationship with yourself at all. By simply being yourself, and you can only be yourself as space consciousness, not as an object. So anything that goes wrong in your life, a form that appears and you allow it to be, that form becomes an opening into the formless within you. So your spiritual practice is whenever something goes wrong in your life, and luckily enough, it happens a lot. Not saying that you cannot improve your life. You can improve your life greatly. You can create a much better reality for yourself, which is nice. You can create through applying the power of thought and action and visualization. You can improve your life considerably. You can live in a bigger, more beautiful place, feel better about yourself, and so on. But you cannot escape from the other, from arising. Sooner or later, another polarity, no matter what situation you go into. And I'm not saying you shouldn't improve your life. It's great. But do not expect it to be free of the other polarity, which will arise. Even in the mansion, something will go wrong. And that's what the gossip magazines are all about. The gossip magazines are about things going wrong in mansions. And that makes people feel a little bit better about things going on in their little houses. But it's the same. And they love reading about famous people, things going wrong in their lives. Oh, isn't that great? Their lives are all collapsing, just like mine. So one thing that usually happens, that when something goes wrong, it pulls you into the old, it strengthens the reactivity of the old mind structures. There's complaining and running away and shouting and fighting. But there's the possibility, when you recognize the little thing, big thing, going wrong, so to speak, that it isn't really wrong, you work with it. You work with it by not resisting the isness of the suchness. Buddha has this beautiful expression, suchness, the suchness. And you work with that rather than resisting it, allowing the suchness of what is right now, the form that this takes. And if the form that this takes should be a limitation, may seem a limitation on your sense of freedom, your freedom of movement, a limitation on what you want to do, a limitation on where you want to get to, then suddenly something rises up in front of you. A door, a wall. You're trying to go that way, and suddenly there's a closed door, metaphorically speaking, or literally speaking. Once we arrived at a place to give a talk, rented a hall. There was already a long lineup outside. Nobody had the key. And there was nobody there. They had all gone home. So 200 people were lining up. Some were getting angry. I arrived. Can't get in. So you're actually faced with a wall. So what do you then start shouting? No, of course you take action. Can you call somebody? Maybe somebody somewhere has a key and maybe they can come. Okay, somebody did that, but in the meantime, here we are. What was there to do except to cooperate with that moment? So I would just go say, greet everybody in the lineup, and everybody was very happy. And almost by the time I reached the last person, somebody had arrived with a key, as if it had been planned. And now the strange thing is, when you cooperate and allow something to be that initially looks like an obstacle, initially looks like something has gone wrong, and both little and small, when you allow it to be, it becomes an opening into something that you cannot predict what that is. It changes its face from hostile to benign and helpful. The very event that seemed hostile turns around on the external level very frequently. Even more importantly, on an inner level, the shift happens. But you cannot really separate what happens on the outside from what happens on the inside. The inner shift happens, and then the significance of that situation changes also. So that really is the true spiritual practice, is to work with all the little and big things in one's life that seem to be obstacles or blockages. Whatever arises in the now, I'm not talking about some mental formations in the dream world of thinking. Actual obstacles, actual things going wrong, losing this, missing that, meeting somebody and it's the wrong time, it's the wrong place. And don't try to figure out why this has happened. It's very often, more often than not, it's impossible, because you may now think there must be a deeper reason why this has gone wrong. That's a secondary thing. That if you are to know the deeper reason, you will suddenly be staring you in the face. You can't miss it. But in the meantime, you don't even need to figure out what the deeper reason is. It's enough to allow what is to be and then see what happens. It doesn't prevent you from taking action. If you can take action, you take action. But in the meantime, the form that this moment takes is given space to be. And there's the key. Then that which had looked like an obstacle, a blockage, becomes an opening into space consciousness. So the archetypal image of that that humanity has is the cross. And people misinterpret it, and even Christians don't fully understand the deeper significance of the cross, because the cross is the worst thing that could possibly happen. It's an archetype of suffering. The man on the cross is humanity. The cross is the archetype of suffering. The cross is a torture instrument. The cross means complete helplessness, complete extreme pain. But also, it means surrender. Not my will, but thy will be done. Thy will is the will of the whole that has brought about the form that this moment takes. And then surrender happens, and it's strange that the torture instrument is a symbol for the divine at the same time. And it turns into a symbol for the divine through the act of surrender. Somebody once said, I don't know who, but it is very wise, that which stands in the way is the way. And I said in this book, Stillness Speaks, that which seemed to deny the existence of any transcendental dimension to life becomes an opening into that dimension. Because it sometimes happens that a serious illness, a dreadful disaster in your life, something going dreadfully wrong to someone close to you, it seems to deny any meaning. It destroys often people's belief. Christians sometimes come to me and said, I've lost my faith because this or that has happened to me, or to my wife, or to my children, my son. And I can't just, how could that happen? They don't realize that they were still at a childish stage in their faith. They had some deal with God. If I do the right things, nothing bad. Okay, do we have a deal? I do all the right things, then nothing bad will happen. But that's not how the universe, because what they're saying is no form will ever dissolve in my life. I will not encounter death or the accidental dissolving of some form. And so they came, and it was good that they lost their faith, because then they went deeper. After losing their faith, they realized that that level of faith was childish, although for a while it helped them, and then it didn't work anymore. So they had to lose it and then go deeper to something far more substantial than that, and learn to the deep lesson that is there when you totally accept any form of death in your life. Because very often it is that something dissolves, something leaves you, comes to an end, and it looks bad. And then you allow it to be. Now you may not be able to allow it to be immediately. The pain that you feel, the emotional pain, may be there, and there's nothing you can do. You weep. But then you allow that to be. It does not matter where you begin to allow what is to be. Ideally, you allow the form that this moment to be as it is totally, and so there's no arising of any pain. But that is not always possible yet for humans. So sometimes an event like the death of somebody close to you, the death of a parent, the death of a sibling, or even more hard, more difficult, the death of a child, it happens. Forms dissolve in their own time. There's no predicting when a life form, the form, will dissolve. And so pain will come. You may weep, and you may experience that's the sadness. And there you can allow that to be, so that it comes to be space around what you feel. There's a deep allowing of the sadness that you feel. And then there's space around it. And that's how you may feel that the sadness, underneath it, you've already touched the peace underneath the sadness. It's already there. But you have to allow the sadness, not saying, I shouldn't be feeling sad, I should be feeling peace. I shouldn't be feeling sad, I should be allowing this moment. No, but that's not the fact of this moment. The fact of this moment is what you feel at this moment. So the yes to what is, the primary yes is to whatever arises. The secondary yes is the yes to whatever you feel about that which arises. In a smaller example, you're on the road, the car breaks down, a little thing goes wrong, depending what country you're in. In some country your life may be threatened if you get stranded by the road, or in some big city in North America too, in some parts of big cities. But so it could be a big thing or a relatively small thing. And again, you may succeed in this not so big event to say, that's how it is. And then you face it completely and say, okay, what action can I take? You become still, and then action happens. But it's possible also that you look at the engine and you go, oh, but no, that's just not again. And suddenly you become conscious of what you feel, the anger that arises. And then you go, and what can you do? You have to, it is what is. At this moment there's anger. And then comes the secondary allowing. You allow the inner, what is on the inner. You give that space. Because the amazing thing is, whatever emotion is passing through your system, there's always far more space than the emotion. You just have to find it. There's a vast spaciousness in you that is greater than any emotion, that can hold any emotion and allow it to be. It's there. So there's suddenly some space around the anger. You've stepped back from the anger into space. There's always more space than things in space. You can verify that tonight. The skies may be clear tonight, still be clear, and you look up into, you go